After his works were rejected by America's film industry, a then unknown Melvin Van Peebles moved to Europe, where he ended up working in France with greater creative opportunities. As he lived there, he had done many things, working as a producer, an editor, a performer, and a writer. By 1967, he had written a couple of novels, the most notable among them being La Permission. That novel was turned into his first feature film, The Story of a Three-Day Pass. It's about an African-American U.S. soldier named Turner being sent to Paris with a weekend pass, winding up in a relationship with a white woman named Miriam during his time there.
The film has somewhat of a frantic element, owing to the light tone and at times rapid editing that make up most of it. But for the themes that it deals with, I find some hint of disappointment and hopelessness underneath the film's tone. Being a film that takes place in a much less accepting time for black people, I will be delving into some facets of the film's handling of race concerning Turner himself, his relationship with Miriam, and the experiences of French openness. A recurring issue for the character of Turner is that, as a black man, his race causes him to primarily face an internal struggle with himself. At the start, he's very loyal to the captain, desperate to appease him so that he may maintain his promotion. But throughout the film, he finds himself challenging this conflict. He finds himself chastised by his own reflection for being the captain's Uncle Tom. He attacks a guitarist that are using a racist term. And even when he goes exploring the city, he finds himself distant when he sees some other black people in a coffee shop. He does find some happiness while in Paris, but internally and externally fails to avert the status his skin color brings him. And his plights add some sympathy for the viewer throughout, especially by the end. After he returns from Paris, he ends up demoted by his captain since his white allies told him of Turner's affair with Miriam. By the end, he abandons his relationship with Miriam upon being unable to reach her over the phone. He pretty much ends up right where he started in the film, losing everything he got. There's an apparent hopelessness that's present for Turner, the result of being a black man at this time.
Before this film, interracial couples tended to have a more idealized depiction. But in this, the relationship between Turner and Miriam is an acceptingly flawed one. There is some beauty held in their love, but it's not really considered ideal. Now, if I had to point to a highlight of the film, it would have to be the scene where Turner and Miriam have these fantasies just as they're about to have sex. Both thoughts are racially charged in their own right, one's fantasy reflecting their perspective of the other's background. Turner envisions himself as a European aristocrat, entering a lavish chateau to kiss his fair lady, Miriam. Where, in another fantasy, Miriam is in tattered clothes, running away from some black people depicted as savages, who lay her down as a sacrifice while Turner, poised as their leader, goes to her. Miriam's decision to picture black people as such seems to suggest some racial prejudice. Even though she does genuinely love Turner, what was previously pointed out suggests that this doesn't mean her prejudice towards black people in general would be immediately erased. As for Turner's fantasy, I had initially given it less attention because I thought it to be not as rude as Miriam's, but even so, it shows that his perception of the French, and possibly to a lesser extent Europeans, is too idealized. Then, as they make love, it's intercut with footage of violence, showcasing their love as a defiant and imperfect act. Looking into the French openness of the time, I can certainly say for starters that they are less harsh on Turner than the Americans are. They notably aren't hateful nor discriminatory, as the only people to directly inconvenience Turner in this are his captain and white allies back in the army. Even similarly to Peebles, despite their different circumstances, both men happened to find more benefit with the French than with Americans. Turner got to fall in love and be in a less hateful environment, and even despite ending up losing his promotion and giving up on Miriam, the experience still changed him in that he isn't going to bend over backwards for the captain. And on Peebles' end, he got to make this movie alongside other projects, and in turn was able to further his career, fooling Hollywood into thinking he was a French auteur thanks to this movie's positive reception. Lastly, what I'd like to address is an issue that motivates how Peebles wrote Turner and his relationship with Miriam. An issue revolving around black representation even today is that there are some black characters who lack complex features, often relegated to them being portrayed as strong characters incapable of wrongdoing and incapable of having vices and vulnerabilities. With this film, Peebles wasn't looking for a light depiction of black people as simply just good people. This is still something that he represents in his subsequent movies, most notably his film Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, which focuses on a criminal with more vices than virtues. He merely wanted black people to be seen as complex, decent human beings, people with flawed actions and flawed ideas about each other. In conclusion, the story of A 3-Day Pass allowed Peebles to tell a story by successfully executing and providing an interracial romance that doesn't shy away from its flaws, foregoing any idealism in the process. He's not trying to push for any extra equality, but instead forwards the idea of simply being ordinary.